Sarah Martinez had always been different from the other girls in her small Texas town. While they dreamed of prom dresses and college parties, she dreamed of serving her country. At 18, she walked into the Army recruitment office with determination burning in her eyes and a heart full of patriotic fire. The recruiter, Sergeant Williams, looked her up and down with skepticism. Sarah was barely 5 feet tall and weighed less than most high school football players. But when she spoke about her desire to serve, her voice carried a conviction that made him take notice. "Military life isn't easy, especially for women," he warned her. "You sure you can handle it?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "Sir, I've been handling things my whole life. This won't be different." She was wrong about that. Military life was harder than anything she had ever experienced. But Sarah didn't just survive basic training. She excelled. She ran faster, shot straighter, and pushed harder than recruits twice her size. Her drill sergeants initially doubted her. But by graduation, they were using her as an example for others. During her second week of basic training, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Late one evening, she snuck out of the barracks and visited a tattoo parlor in the nearby town. The artist, an old Marine named Tommy, listened as she explained what she wanted. "You sure about this, kid?" Tommy asked, cleaning his equipment. "This ain't something you can take back." Sarah nodded firmly. "I'm sure. This means everything to me." The tattoo took 4 hours to complete. It covered most of her upper back, stretching from shoulder to shoulder. When Tommy finished, he stepped back and whistled low. "That's some powerful ink. Soldier, you better be ready for what comes with it." Sarah looked at the tattoo in the mirror, tears filling her eyes. It wasn't just beautiful, it was sacred. Every line had meaning. Every detail told a story that most people would never understand. After basic training, Sarah was assigned to Fort Carson in Colorado. She quickly earned respect among her fellow soldiers. She was tough, reliable, and never complained, no matter how difficult the assignment. Her commanding officers took notice, and within 2 years, she had earned several commendations and a promotion. But Sarah kept her tattoo hidden. She never spoke about it, never showed it to anyone. During medical exams, she always requested female doctors when possible. In the showers, she was quick and discreet. The tattoo was her secret, her private source of strength. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in March. Sarah's unit was preparing for deployment to Afghanistan when she received an urgent message to report to Colonel Harrison's office immediately. She had no idea what this was about. But the serious tone of the message made her stomach turn. Colonel Harrison was known throughout the base as a hard man who demanded perfection. He had served 3 tours in Iraq and had little patience for what he called modern military softness. When Sarah entered his office, she found him sitting behind his desk with 2 other officers she didn't recognize. "Private Martinez," Colonel Harrison began without looking up from a file on his desk. "We've received some concerning information about you." Sarah's heart began racing, but she kept her voice steady. "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean." One of the unknown officers, a stern-faced woman with captain's bars, leaned forward. "We have reports that you may be concealing something that could affect your security clearance and deployment status." The room felt like it was spinning. Sarah had worked so hard to get where she was. Her deployment to Afghanistan was supposed to be the next step in her military career. Everything she had trained for was about to happen. "Sir, I need you to be more specific," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. Colonel Harrison finally looked up at her. His gray eyes were cold and calculating. "There are allegations that you have unauthorized markings on your body that may indicate gang affiliation or other security risks." Sarah's blood ran cold. Someone had seen her tattoo. But who? And why were they reporting it now? Just weeks before deployment, Private Martinez, the 3rd officer, spoke for the first time. He was a major with intelligence insignia on his uniform. "Due to the serious nature of these allegations, we need you to submit to a full inspection. This is not optional." IDD, Sarah knew she had no choice. In the military, refusing a direct order meant court-martial. Her career, everything she had worked for, everything she believed in. It was all about to be destroyed by people who couldn't possibly understand the truth. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "Strip out of the uniform, Private," Colonel Harrison commanded. "We need to see exactly what you're hiding." Sarah's hands trembled as she began unbuttoning her uniform jacket. Each button felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She had always known this day might come, but she had hoped she would have more time to prove herself first. As she removed her shirt, the three officers watched with hawk-like intensity. When her back was finally exposed, the room fell completely silent. The tattoo was revealed in all its intricate detail, and Sarah could hear one of the officers intake breath sharply. What they saw was not what they expected. It wasn't a gang symbol, or anything that suggested criminal activity. Instead, covering most of Sarah's upper back was an incredibly detailed and beautiful piece of art that told a story none of them had anticipated. Colonel Harrison stood up slowly, his expression changing from suspicion to something Sarah couldn't quite identify. The female captain's mouth fell open, and the intelligence major stepped closer to get a better look. "Private Martinez," Colonel Harrison said, his voice now completely different from before. "Where did you get this tattoo?" Sarah straightened her shoulders, finding strength she didn't know she still had. "Sir, it's a long story. We have time," the colonel replied. And for the first time since entering the office, Sarah heard something that sounded almost like respect in his voice. She had spent 2 years hiding this part of herself, afraid that others wouldn't understand. But now, standing half-dressed in front of 3 superior officers, Sarah realized that maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to tell the truth about who she really was and what her tattoo actually represented. The tattoo wasn't just ink on skin. It was a promise, a memorial, and a declaration all rolled into one. And once these officers understood its true meaning, everything about how they saw her would change forever. Sarah took a deep breath and began to tell her story. The 3 officers listened without interruption as the truth unfolded. "My father was Staff Sergeant Miguel Martinez," she began, her voice gaining strength with each word. "He served 2 tours in Vietnam and 1 in Desert Storm. This tattoo is his Purple Heart citation, his service record, and the names of every soldier in his unit who didn't make it home." Colonel Harrison's expression softened completely. The intelligence major stepped even closer, studying the intricate details of the tattoo with new understanding. Sarah continued, "The center of the tattoo is a replica of the Medal of Honor. Not because my father received one, but because of what he did to try to earn one." The female captain spoke for the first time since the inspection began. "What did he do?" "In Vietnam, his unit was ambushed during a routine patrol. My father was the only one who wasn't injured in the initial attack. Instead of taking cover and waiting for backup, he spent the next 6 hours pulling wounded soldiers to safety while under heavy fire. He saved 12 men that day." Sarah's voice began to crack slightly, but she pressed on. "He was recommended for the Medal of Honor, but the paperwork got lost in the chaos of war. By the time someone tried to reconstruct what happened, most of the witnesses had either died in later battles or been discharged. My father never received the recognition he deserved." Colonel Harrison sat back down, his demeanor completely transformed. "How do you know all this?" "Because I spent 3 years researching it after he died," Sarah replied. "I contacted every surviving member of his unit, found military records, even flew to Vietnam to visit the exact location where it happened. I have witness statements, photographs, everything. My father was a hero, but the army never knew it." The intelligence major was now studying the tattoo with what looked like reverence. "These names here, they're all real soldiers?" Sarah nodded. "Every single one. The tattoo artist, Tommy, is actually a retired Marine who specializes in memorial tattoos for military families. Each name represents a man who died serving his country. My father carried their memory until the day he died, and now I carry it." "How did your father die?" the female captain asked gently. Sarah's composure finally cracked, and tears began flowing down her cheeks. "PTSD. He never got help for what he experienced over there. Back then, soldiers were just expected to tough it out. He started drinking heavily when I was in middle school, and it got worse every year. 3 years ago, he took his own life. The room was dead silent. Colonel Harrison cleared his throat and looked down at his hands. The night before he died, Sarah continued, he told me the whole story about Vietnam. He made me promise that I would serve my country better than he felt he had been able to. He said the only way to honor those dead soldiers was to make sure their sacrifice meant something. She wiped her eyes but kept talking. I joined the army because of that promise. Every day I put on this uniform, I'm representing not just myself, but my father and the 12 men he saved, and the men who didn't come home. This tattoo isn't about gang affiliation or security risks. It's about carrying forward the memory of heroes who were forgotten. The intelligence major surprised everyone by removing his jacket and rolling up his sleeve. On his forearm was a similar style tattoo with names and dates. My grandfather served in Korea. I understand why you did this. Colonel Harrison stood up again and walked around his desk to face Sarah directly. Private Martinez, why didn't you tell anyone about this before? You could have avoided all this suspicion. Sarah straightened her shoulders. Sir, with respect, I shouldn't have to explain my personal family history to prove my loyalty to this country. I've served with distinction for 2 years. My record speaks for itself. The fact that someone saw my tattoo and immediately assumed it was something criminal says more about their prejudices than it does about my character. The female captain actually smiled at that. She's got a point, Colonel. Colonel Harrison nodded slowly. You're absolutely right, Private. And I owe you an apology. We all do. But Sarah wasn't finished. Sir, there's something else you should know about this tattoo. It's not complete. What do you mean? There's space left at the bottom, Sarah explained. It's for my own service record. When I finish my military career, whether that's in 4 years or 20, my own achievements will be added to complete the design. It's my way of proving that the Martinez family legacy of service continues. Colonel Harrison was quiet for a long moment, clearly processing everything he had heard. Finally, he spoke. Private Martinez, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Do you still want to deploy to Afghanistan? Yes, sir, more than ever. Even after what just happened here? Even knowing that some people will always judge you before they know the facts? Sarah looked each of the 3 officers in the eye before answering. Sir, my father faced enemy fire to save his fellow soldiers. If I can't handle some ignorant gossip from people who don't understand honor, then I don't deserve to wear this uniform. The intelligence major spoke up. Colonel, if I may, I think Private Martinez should know that the allegation about her tattoo came from Sergeant Phillips in the supply unit. He claimed he saw what looked like gang markings when she was loading equipment last week. Sarah's jaw tightened. Sergeant Phillips had been making crude comments about female soldiers since she arrived at Fort Carson. He had asked her out twice, and both times she had politely declined. This was clearly his way of getting revenge. I see, Colonel Harrison said, understanding immediately. Well, Sergeant Phillips will be having a very different conversation with us tomorrow. But the female captain had another concern. Private Martinez, while I absolutely support you and your right to honor your father, you need to understand something. In Afghanistan, if you're captured by the enemy, that tattoo could be used against you. They might see it as proof of American military involvement in past conflicts they oppose. Sarah had already considered this possibility. Ma'am, I accept that risk. If I die serving my country, I'll die with my father's memory and those soldiers' names on my back. I can't think of a more honorable way to go. The 3 officers exchanged glances. It was clear that their entire perspective on this situation had shifted completely. Colonel Harrison walked back to his desk and picked up Sarah's deployment file. Private Martinez, I'm making some changes to your assignment. Sarah's heart sank. She was sure they were going to remove her from deployment despite everything she had explained. Instead of the standard infantry support role you were assigned, I'm recommending you for a position with the unit that handles fallen soldier recovery and memorial services. Your understanding of military honor and sacrifice would be valuable in that role. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was actually a promotion disguised as a reassignment. "Thank you, sir," she managed to say. "Don't thank me yet," Colonel Harrison replied with a slight smile. "That unit faces some of the most dangerous situations in the entire theater. You'll be going into hostile areas to recover fallen soldiers and ensure they come home with dignity. It's not an easy assignment." "I wouldn't want easy, sir." As Sarah put her uniform back on, she felt different than when she had taken it off. For 2 years, she had been hiding part of who she was, afraid that others wouldn't understand. Now, for the first time since joining the military, she felt completely authentic in her uniform. The female captain approached her as she finished dressing. "Private, I want you to know that what you've shared today has reminded me why I joined the military in the first place. Thank you for that. Thank you for that." But as Sarah prepared to leave Colonel Harrison's office, none of them realized that the real test was still to come. Word of what had happened in that room was about to spread throughout the base, and not everyone was going to react the way these 3 officers had. Within 24 hours, everyone on base knew about Sarah's tattoo. But the story had gotten twisted in the telling, and different versions were spreading like wildfire. Some soldiers heard that she was the daughter of a Medal of Honor recipient. Others heard that she had a massive gang tattoo that almost got her kicked out of the army. A few heard that she was some kind of war hero herself. The truth, as usual, was getting lost in the chaos of military gossip. Sarah discovered just how bad things had gotten when she walked into the mess hall for breakfast the next morning. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as she passed. Some soldiers stared with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with what looked like respect. She sat down alone at a table in the corner, trying to ignore the attention. But ignoring Sergeant Phillips was going to be impossible. Phillips approached her table with 2 of his friends. He was a large man who used his size to intimidate people, especially women. His face was red with anger. Well, he said loudly enough for half the mess hall to hear. "If it isn't our little gang member." Sarah looked up from her breakfast calmly. "Good morning, Sergeant Phillips." "Don't you good morning me," Phillips snarled. "I know what you really are. You might have fooled the officers with some sob story, but I know criminal markings when I see them." The mess hall was now completely silent. Every eye was focused on the confrontation. Sarah stood up slowly. Even though Phillips was nearly twice her size, she showed no sign of fear. "Sergeant Phillips, you filed a false report about me. You accused me of having gang affiliations without any evidence. You tried to destroy my career because I wouldn't go out with you." Phillips's face got even redder. "That's a lie. I was doing my duty, reporting suspicious activity." "Really?" Sarah's voice was getting louder too. "Because I think you were upset that a woman half your size outshot you at the range last month. I think you were angry that I've been promoted twice while you're still stuck in supply because nobody trusts your judgment." A murmur went through the watching soldiers. It was true that Sarah had dramatically outperformed Phillips at the shooting range, and everyone knew it. "You want to see my tattoo so badly, Sergeant?" Sarah continued. "You want to know what you were so afraid of?" Before anyone could stop her, Sarah pulled off her uniform shirt right there in the mess hall. Her back was completely exposed, and every soldier in the room could see the intricate memorial tattoo in all its detail. The reaction was immediate and powerful. Several soldiers who had served in Iraq or Afghanistan recognized the style and meaning immediately. One older sergeant actually stood up and removed his hat in a gesture of respect. "Those are names," someone whispered. "Those are all soldiers' names." Sarah turned around, so she was facing Phillips directly, the tattoo still visible to everyone behind her. "This is my father's Purple Heart citation, Sergeant Phillips. These are the names of American heroes who died serving their country. This is a memorial to soldiers who gave their lives for people like you." Phillips was now looking uncomfortable as the mood in the room shifted dramatically. Soldiers were starting to move closer to get a better look at the tattoo, and their expressions were far from hostile. Sarah put her shirt back on and stepped closer to Phillips. "My father saved 12 soldiers in Vietnam and never got the recognition he deserved. He came home with wounds you can't see and fought a war in his mind for 30 years. He lost that war 3 years ago, and I joined the army to make sure his sacrifice meant something. The silence in the mess hall was now complete. You could hear a pin drop. So, if you want to call me a gang member again, Sergeant Phillips, you go right ahead. But understand that you're calling the daughter of a hero a criminal. You're accusing someone who joined the military to honor her father's service of being disloyal to her country. Phillips was clearly trapped. Everything Sarah had said was true, and everyone in the room knew it. His false report was looking more petty and vindictive by the minute, but Sarah wasn't finished. You know what the real problem is here, Sergeant? It's not my tattoo. It's that you can't stand the fact that a small woman from Texas is a better soldier than you'll ever be. That's when something unexpected happened. Sergeant Williams, the same recruiter who had doubted Sarah 3 years earlier, stood up from a table across the room. "Private Martinez," he called out. "I was the recruiter who signed you up. I remember you walking into my office, all of 18 years old, telling me you wanted to serve your country." He walked over to where Sarah and Phillips were standing. "I doubted you then, because of your size. I was wrong. And Sergeant Phillips is wrong now." Williams turned to address the entire mess hall. "This soldier has served with distinction for 2 years. Her record is spotless. Her performance evaluations are outstanding, and now I find out she's been carrying the memory of her father's heroism and his fallen comrades on her back this whole time." He looked directly at Phillips. "If you have a problem with that, Sergeant, you have a problem with everything this uniform represents." One by one, other soldiers began standing up. Within minutes, nearly the entire mess hall was on their feet. It wasn't quite applause, but it was clearly a show of support for Sarah. Phillips realized he was completely outnumbered and outmaneuvered. He mumbled something about having to get to work and left quickly with his 2 friends. But the most powerful moment came when an older soldier Sarah had never spoken to approached her table. He was a grizzled veteran with Master Sergeant stripes who looked like he'd seen more combat than everyone else in the room combined. "Private Martinez," he said quietly. "My name is Master Sergeant Rodriguez. I served with your father in Vietnam." Sarah's heart stopped. "You knew my father?" "Miguel Martinez saved my life on March 15th, 1969, Rodriguez said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was one of the 12 soldiers he pulled to safety that day. I've been looking for a way to honor his memory for 34 years. Tears began flowing down Sarah's cheeks. She had never met anyone who actually knew her father during the war. "Your father was the bravest man I ever served with," Rodriguez continued. "He should have gotten the Medal of Honor for what he did. The fact that he didn't was one of the greatest injustices I've ever witnessed." Rodriguez reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and metal. It was a military challenge coin, worn smooth from decades of handling. "Miguel gave this to me the day before I was discharged from the hospital. He said it was for good luck. I've carried it ever since." Rodriguez pressed the coin into Sarah's hand. "I think it's time it went back to the Martinez family." Sarah could barely speak through her tears. "Master Sergeant, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Rodriguez replied. "Just keep being the soldier your father would be proud of. From what I've seen, you're already doing that." As word spread throughout the base about what had happened in the mess hall, Sarah's story took on a life of its own. But this time, it was the true story. Soldiers who had never spoken to her before began approaching her to share their own family military histories. Others asked about getting memorial tattoos of their own. Colonel Harrison called Sarah back to his office 3 days later. This time, she wasn't nervous. "Private Martinez," he began with a smile. "I have some news. I've been in contact with the Army Historical Research Center. They've agreed to reopen your father's case for Medal of Honor consideration." Sarah's eyes widened. "Sir, is that really possible after all these years?" "It won't be easy," Harrison admitted. "But you've already done most of the research. Master Sergeant Rodriguez has agreed to provide a formal statement, and we've located 2 other surviving members of your father's unit. If we can build a strong enough case, the Army might be willing to posthumously award your father the recognition he deserved." "Even if he doesn't get the medal," Sarah replied. Just having the Army officially acknowledge what he did would mean everything. Colonel Harrison nodded. There's one more thing. The incident with Sergeant Phillips has been resolved. He's been transferred to another base and will receive counseling about appropriate professional behavior. As Sarah left the colonel's office, she thought about how much her life had changed in just 1 week. She had gone from hiding who she was to standing proudly as the daughter of a hero. Her tattoo was no longer a secret to be ashamed of, but a badge of honor that connected her to a legacy of service and sacrifice. 2 months later, Sarah deployed to Afghanistan as scheduled. Her new assignment with the Fallen Soldier Recovery Unit turned out to be exactly the right place for her. She helped ensure that dozens of American soldiers made it home to their families with dignity and honor. During her deployment, she received word that her father had been posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration for valor. While it wasn't the Medal of Honor, it was official recognition that Staff Sergeant Miguel Martinez was indeed a hero. When Sarah returned from Afghanistan a year later, she had earned her own commendations for valor under fire. True to her promise, she had the new awards added to her tattoo, completing the design that honored both her father's legacy and her own service. She never regretted the decision to get the tattoo, even though it had nearly cost her career. In the end, it had led to her father receiving the recognition he deserved and had connected her with fellow soldiers who understood the true meaning of honor and sacrifice. Years later, when Sarah became a sergeant herself, she would tell new recruits about the importance of understanding what service really means. She would explain that wearing the uniform isn't just about following orders or completing missions, but about carrying forward the legacy of everyone who came before. And sometimes, when she met soldiers who seemed to have forgotten why they joined the military, she would tell them about her father and the 12 men he saved in a Vietnamese jungle 34 years ago. She would remind them that every uniform tells a story, and every story matters.